Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming along to our webinar this morning. We're going to show you as much as we can across about half an hour to 45 minutes to show you as much as we can about Powerproject. Please use the question box on your GoToMeeting panel if you want to ask any questions. If you've got questions that you want to ask after the webinar, please get in touch with us. Our details will be on the slides at the end of the session. We're very, very lucky to have Chris Ray from Alicosoft available to run this session for us today. I'll hand over to Chris and we can get started.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. And it should be a PowerPoint presentation up there at the moment. So today we're looking at part one of a series of webinars that we're going to be running. And this is for maximising your project. And today's part is all about creating the project itself, creating the schedule itself, and that means from literally going from file new through to a linked activities and rescheduling and baselining of a project. So as Michael said, if you do have any questions, there is a question option box inside GoToWebinar, so you can click in there and ask any questions. If we'll either try and answer them at the time, or maybe at the end of the session we'll answer those as well, because we may be covering those items as we go through. So you'll all be muted, so we won't be able to hear you at this point, so do use that questions. We're going to now start, and the first thing we're going to start is just what we're really going to cover today. And I'll also we'll say that after today, this webinar will be recorded and will be available through the link you've already clicked on in there. So if we look at what we're going to start with today, is we're going to look at creating our project schedule, and we're going to be using templates and talk about that, how they work. We're going to be looking at calendars inside the system, important understanding what working days you have, and which calendars are being used by which activities. We're going to be creating activities inside the project. We're going to link those up, and as we create those activities, we can look at different ways that we can actually do that. We're then going to reschedule it, so we're going to recalculate it to see what impact it has, and if we make changes, how does that happen. We're going to add some summary groups to it so we can see those. We're going to do some coding, so we're going to actually tag different activities so they're responsible for different people. And then we're going to look at impacts and changes on the project. So what happens if we make a change on the project, and the advantage to actually using things like baselines to track those. And we'll be using Powerproject today, as Michael said. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just exit this out, and let's see. And if I open up Powerproject here, which is on my machine, so this is Asta Powerproject with just no project loaded at the moment. And so we're going to start off by creating a new project in here. And it's important to understand, even before we click on, creating a project, a lot of people, when they create projects, they might create projects from existing. So they'll save the old project as a different name, open it up, change the date and so forth. If you're going to do that, you actually have in here an option to choose your existing project to base your new project on. And then we have an available list of templates that are available here. Now you'll notice that some of these, you've got like the MSP for Microsoft Project Template, P6 for Oracle Primavera P6. So you can use those that give still the same software, but it gives you the option to have some of the formats and settings to a more familiar way that you might be used to. Now, before I actually open up this, I am going to show you that within Powerproject you can import existing projects. So those could be imported from Primavera, XML, or XER, or even SureTrack. There you can actually export your projects back out to P6, XML, or XER. You have an ability to import projects from Microsoft Project. That will be through either XML, or if you have project on your machine, you can actually choose the MPP format, and you can then export those out to those formats as well. The MPP will only work if you have project on your machine in that side. We're not going to be using the import exports, but it does mean that even once you've created your project, you can share it with a wider audience who may not have the software, but I will talk about that a bit more as well as we go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by creating our first project, and I'm going to choose a template here. Now the advantage is we have some standard templates, but you can create your own templates, and we highly recommend that everybody has a template that suits them, because then there are all those start off items and actions that you might want to do by do this setting, by set these calendars up, by setting up these functions. That can all be done in a template, and everyone in the company could use that. You standardize it, and it means you have a familiar look and also a familiar reporting ability to your projects. So we've got a very simple one here that's called new project template. I'm going to create a, call that new. So here I say new project, let's call it my new project 1, 2, 3. And let's say this template here has cost setup, code setup, resources set up, everything you might need for this type of project we're starting with. But again, you can completely customize that. You can even set up the print settings in it. So it means you're a running start when you first create your project. So I've created my file name, and I'm going to say my new project 1, 2, 3, and I can say who it's for, client A, and who it's by, and then I can choose the start date. And again, if I get this wrong, I can always come back and change it. It doesn't use the start date from the template, it uses this date. So I can say it's going to start from the 6th of April. There is a user side, we're not going to set up any of that. And I'm just going to then create that, and that's going to go away, and that's now created a new project that's now set up. Now, if you see here, we've got, looking at the view, you've got your ribbon at the top, fairly standard. It's got specific options as you go through. We have a project view down the left-hand side, which we'll work through and use as we go through, and I'll show you what that's for. That can be hidden. We have our table, and that table has some predefined columns, but you can also add your own. And again, this is a part of the template that you can customize the template, and Solid Support can assist you with creating that template and setting that template up to fit your needs. And then over in the right hand side, we have a bar chart, which is where our activity is going to appear. Now, just to understand a few familiar options in here, you've got a little save icon at the top here, there, which allows you to save at any time. If I click on save, you'll notice it disappears, it's grayed out. That means everything has been saved. I've got no unsaved data on screen. I've also got an undo and a redo. And so what that allows me to do is obviously undo and redo. It is undo up to, well, back to the point where you opened up the project. So even if I've done save, even if I've clicked reschedule, if I've done those, I can undo through the saves. I can undo through all of that. So that really works well for me as I'm working, because I can use that as a little what if. Do something, I don't like it, I can undo it. I'm not stuck with it, even if I've done it, saved it, and I can undo it. If I've closed down, it's committed, but up until that point, I can move back and forth within that. So that's just a familiarization with the buttons in here. Then what we've got here is in this project view, we've got our setup, and this is where our project will appear and the structure will appear over here as we go through. We've got resources, costs, codes, and the one thing to point your attention to starting with is calendars. Now, these are important. Now, you can always add calendars at a later stage, but it's always useful to have these set up in your template ready and waiting. So here we've got a number of calendars already set up. And you see for over here, we've got ones set up for all the different states, 5 and 6 days with public holidays already defined. And inside here, if I actually look at the properties of this calendar, you can see it's got we're in 2020, and these days here highlighted are the holidays or public holidays that have been assigned. And obviously I can look forward in future years to see where they are. They're already set up in each of these calendars respectively. I can print this out, so if I wanted to print out a calendar, I can print that out and see. And in here, it's just been set up ready for us to go. And that's the real advantage of having a template with all your calendars set up. You just have to go File New with your template, and you're up and running. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to the calendars and use those as we go through. What I will show you here is, notice there is a red tick. That's just indicating that's the default calendars. When I start creating activities, that's what's going to be created for me. So what I'm going to first of all just start off by simply, different ways you're going to set up your project. And I think the first thing to talk about as well before you start setting up your project is the level of detail you're going to get into. Powerproject will allow you to create unlimited level of detail if you wanted to. But you have to always be aware that whatever project you set up, what schedule you set up, you need to maintain on an ongoing basis. So, be careful about entering activities down to the hour, because you would then have to monitor and modify them and control those. So we always, where a level where you need to go and work. So if I'm gonna create my first one, I'm gonna call. Whoops. I'm gonna create a first one. Let's put a starting establishment there. I'm going to create a first activity. Now I've typed the title in there. I can put a duration in on that, and I can say that's going to be 4 days. And I press enter, and that enters my 4 days into there. Now, just to show you, that's created a single activity and our task on there that's 4 days long. Now, what I can do is I can obviously change that just by typing in different durations, and actually in days I can just type in the single one. But I might actually want to say, if I say it's 6 days, it's 6 days there, or I might say it's 2 weeks, and I can type in 2 weeks. You'll notice this blue hatch in which you can control the color for is actually the holiday, so that's a bank holiday that's in there. I might say it's 1 week, 2 days. So I can type that in. I can type in any duration you want, and you have weeks, months, years, you have days, hours, minutes, and for those who ever might want to, you could go to seconds. We don't have anyone really going down to seconds on here. But I can type these in and put these in, and then on my activity over here, my task, I can just move that around, and I'm not worried about where it starts. This grey line is my start date. I'm not worried if it's before or after that at the moment, where it is. And if I want to extend it, I can drag it out like so. I can reduce it. And notice when I reduce it, it's just changing its duration and so forth. It's just like changing this, but I'm changing it up here. Now, I could then type in all my tasks in here and type all my durations in, and then have them over here and then link them up, which we'll talk through. Or what you might have is you might have those activities already in, say, for Excel, Word, or whatever you want. So in here, I've got a whole list of activities that I can just copy. And inside Powerproject, I'll just get rid of that one there. Inside Powerproject, I can just paste those in, and that puts in all of my activities in one go. And as you can see, they're in there in that side of it. Now, if I want to link these together and put a relationship between these, I can literally just draw that relationship. So as I'm going through, I'm saying, oh, that links to that one, that links to that one, and I can say that links to that one, and so forth, and linking those there. I might say that I know that all of these, and I'm just going to be very simplistic here, actually links, and link those tasks automatically. So I've just put those in that place there. So there are all my activities, and you can see my end date there. Now it's auto rescheduling because I've got that turned on. I can turn that off if I want to. And I now have a list of all my activities with durations that have come across from Excel, and the start dates have now been determined based on my start date and on my activity durations and the logic that I've put into those. Now, if any of those logics weren't correct, I could say I want to actually move that logic to here, so it moves it around, and then I could say I also want to then maybe link from there. Let's just say if I wanted that one to be longer, I could link from there to there, and I could see that in that side. Now, at the moment in this template, it's turned off, but I can turn on my critical path. So I can see my critical path, and I can also turn on my float, so I can see how that's impacting as well. So you can see my float, and that's how much this activity can be delayed. And that's really useful visual information. So for example, if I didn't have this link here, my float's now telling me this activity could be delayed to the end of the project. Now I'm just going to squash this down a little bit and then just zoom in so I can actually see it into easily. So that's telling me that that task has a potential, and that's my first floor. Well, I shouldn't be able to do my roof until I've done my first floor, and it now adjusts the floats. So I now won't, if this task goes past that float or gets extended past it like so, it's going to have an impact on it. So I can see that as I go through. I'm just going to undo that back to where it was as it was before. Now, this is a straight list of activities, only 16 activities, quite manageable on a piece of paper, but projects do get larger. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually group and summarize these together. So we're going to say that, first of all, you know, we're going to highlight the first list of activities, and so we're going to summarize and group those together and say that that's site setup in there. And by doing that, we have a little plus or minus that we can actually open and close. So we don't have to see all that detail in one go. I'm also going to say that we're going to do basement to roof, which is going to be summarized as structures. And I'm going to say basement to first floor is going to be, let's say, internal services and finishes, let's just say. And then I'm going to say that we're going to put some external works in here as the end, like so. And I'm just going to say, whoops, I can type. There we go. External works, and we've now got build complete as our milestone, which has no duration in there at the bottom. Now, zoom out a bit so we can see that. Now, we're also going to say is that's our project, but we're actually going to highlight all of it and summarize it as our construction. And that we might have other phases to it. So construction could be just one phase of it. So now I can see just at a high level when it starts and finishes and how long it's taking. So that's in there as we look at it. Now, once I've done that, I haven't hit save yet. I'm going to hit save, but my undo is always still available to me as I'm working through that. And again, I may not want to at the moment look at the float and critical path, so I can turn that off. So I can just see there, I can see my holidays and so forth. Now, what I can also do is I can look at, I've got my calendars down here, and I could say, for example, well, this activity here might have a different calendar. So what I might say is I'm going to use Queensland one and assign that on the demolition for one reason or another. It gives me a quick check. What do? I want to maintain how long it is going to be. And notice by doing that, it's actually changed the calendar on that activity. So I can now see the holidays, and there's actually a holiday in the middle of that that's going to impact that task because that calendar is there. And if I look at the calendars here in the columns that are set up, it's showing me that I've got that calendar set on that one. And again, I could use this column and just choose whichever ones I want, and I can move those back, and it just confirms with there, it moves to however I want it to look. So it's actually quite easily and simply just change as you want and interact with it. So I'm just going to save on that. Now, one of the other things you can do is this is quite a small project, but I could, if I wanted to, I could actually create a new window, and I can, let's just tile it horizontally in here, and say you do have a very large project that you've got in. This could be the bottom of your project over down here, and we're at the top of our project up here. And if I want to, I can actually drag a link and draw it across the actual two windows to draw a link straight in. So I don't have to worry about scrolling down and so forth, and I can just close that window down if I don't need to see it. And obviously, if you've got multiple monitors, you can span this across more, but it's just a quick way of doing that. Now, I've created a structure here called construction, site setup, structures, internal services, external works. Over in the left-hand side, this project view, what's really useful is this program view, this structure, because I can actually, it replicates the structure in there. So I can now see construction, site setup, structures, internals and external works. But also I can click on any one of them, and I'm now working on this. Now this is really useful because you're not cluttered with hundreds, if not thousands of lines on the screen. You're just controlling this one inside here, making your changes, and then all you do is go back here to see the impact and so forth. I can also look at just site setup and external works together. so I could interact between these two phases of the project if I wanted to. Imagine you had different floors set up. You could do that as you go through. So I'm going to go back to this section here. So I'm looking at this. So I've got a project set up, very simply set up in this side. What I'm going to look at here is I'm going to look at these tasks. Who's doing those? Now, people talk about resourcing up a project, but there's several stages of where you would go to resourcing. And we're not going to resource at this stage. That's one of the later stages, later parts of these webinars. But what we're going to do is we're going to tag them as different responsibilities. And to do that, we've got code libraries. Now, a code library is a library of different activities or items. So in here, for example, trades, this is just a default one that's in there. You could delete these, change these, add your own code libraries in here. But these are the different trades that we've got working on the project. So what I can do here is I can say is, well, if we're going to say that this one here, let's say I want groundwork over here, I can drop, I can drop the groundwork onto an activity, and I can just do that. So DD groundworks on those ones. I can do demolition on that one, so I can assign them, and I can also have, you know, I've got bricklayer on that one, and for this purpose, I'm just going to literally just use 2 or 3 different ones just to show you how it's there, and I can just drag and drop. If I wanted to, I might say that those ones are all done by Bricklayer and Sons, like so. And once I've started assigning these, what I can do is I can go down to any of these and say, okay, well, open the code breakdown structure, which means show me what activities are assigned to that. So if you've got different trades and subcontractors working with you, you can actually produce this and print this out as an output for them of the activities that they need to do. You can add extra columns in if you want, but I can also say I want to look at all trades, so I can see how it's been broken down. And so I can see, but by subcontractor rather than structure of project. At any time I go back and it's still there. I can make changes in this. So if I open this up, I can make changes, which you can see have impacts, and they also have impacts here. Now, obviously I've got full control and I can do this. You wouldn't want to give anyone else to do that, but you can see the impact you're making. And that's just using trade contractors assigned here. Now, we've also got items like inside here, you've got floor level. So sometimes when people have got scheduled on a multi-story building, they can assign to different tasks which floor level they are, because then they can filter on those and you can extract there. You've got build stages if you're doing multiple builds in there. You've got house types if it's residential, procurement stages, and even risk factor. So you can actually assign a risk factor to your activities and then filter out which ones are the high risk, which are medium, and so forth. So we've just got the trades assigned in here, and we're at that point there. Now we've got our trades assigned. We're looking at that, we can visualize that, we can roll it up. So I could, if I wanted to, I can just double click on these as well. I can roll these up so we can see, and if I just zoom out there, you can see the whole thing. There's my milestone end date. The question always comes with the project, if it happened as you planned, it would be great. But in real life, there are delays, and obviously at the moment we're going through a lot of those potentially. But there are delays in just day-to-days that could happen. There could be change and variances, you know, change orders that happen on it. It could be weather conditions, like so. So I would want to look and see how I can impact or how I can put those into my schedule. Now, some people will extend an activity so they can see it being changed. Other people will insert a new activity, so I could insert a new one to represent that delay in here. Oops. Like so. But other people might want to actually have it part of, you know, like it could be a client delay order or change, and that could be 10 days inside there, and that's going to impact between there, which puts that there, and oops, let's just do that, and this one here. So you can see that that's now had an impact on that activity. There you can see that has an impact in it. Now that's great, we can see that, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say in here, and if I just turn my lines off so you can actually see this, you can see the links going in here. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to actually select this link and go into that link properties. Now at the moment it's defined as a normal link within my project, normal relationship, but I'm going to actually label that as a possible delay in there. And when I do that, you can see it actually colors it a different way, and I've chosen that color in my template, and this is part as well what you can set up. Now that's great, I can see that that's a possible delay inside there. Now what I can do is when I go to reschedule, if I go to options, one of the powerful features here is that we can actually say when recalculating, when rescheduling here, I want to ignore certain types of links. And in here, I'm going to ignore possible delays. And if I do that and then recalculate my project, it's actually, although it's in here, I can now see what it was like before, but actually I'm ignoring that link. So I can put them in and I have two views of it. What's it like with the delay in, those delay links in, and what's it like without those? So as we go through, you can see those impact in there. And again, down here, I could actually summarize that as, you know, change order there. And I could even say that those are actually all of my change orders. So over here, I've got a list now change orders, and I can see those and track those, and they're part of the project. Now, as I go through this, I have that added into it. I'm actually going to, at this point, I'm just going to remove that from there. Just come back to my standard project. Now, when you are making changes to your project and you are making impacts to it, putting delays in is great, but also knowing what it's like at a certain point. So, and again, that might be week 1, week 2, week 3, and so forth. So I'm just saving that there. So I'm just going to go into the project tab and go to Baseline Manager. And inside here, I'm going to click on Baseline Manager, What If Manager for my project. And this allows me to create a snapshot, a baseline of my project. Now, unlike other systems, Powerproject will actually create, remember everything about this project. So it's not going to just remember the start and finish date. It's going to remember start and finish date, links. It's going to remember everything, every setting about every activity is going to be remembered. What calendar it was using, you know, what codes were assigned and so forth in there. It's a complete copy. And also there is no limitation to how many of these baselines you have. Now the advantage with that is if there's no limitations with the baselines you can have, you can actually have your original contract, but then you can actually, as change orders come in, you can put those in, but you can also have weekly baselines, and at any time you can display those back in there, and that will allow you to see you know, how you're doing now compared to week 4 or month 3, whatever you wanted to. So I'm just going to create a baseline, and again, I'm going to call this the contract baseline, and I'm just going to click on finish. It's as simple as that to create a baseline, and I can actually choose it, and I've got a color there I can choose. So if I wanted to, I could make that, let's just say orange in there. The orange line underneath is my baseline. Now, if I don't want to see that, I can just turn that off. It's still there, but all the dates, everything about it is there. In the columns, whenever I add a column in, and let's just add, I'm just going to add a start date, for example, in here. Every column I add, I can choose where it comes from. So I can actually say that that start date is going to come from the baseline. I could add variances in to show me the difference between the start date and the baseline. So I'm just going to turn that baseline back on. And now if I made a change and an impact to my project, you can instantly visually see that. But I can also add a column in from dates and say that I want to see the finish variance of that, and that's coming from the current baseline, which is the contract one, and I can see where the problems are. Now, if I was over here and I started making mitigating circumstances, on my project, I can see that although we were 18 days, we're now down to 11 days. So we're just trying to claw back those items. Now, those clawing back those items could be you using different calendars. So you might plan your schedule to work on a 5-day, but you could accelerate it using a 6 or 7-day, whichever permitting on site. So you can use those as you go through. And again, you don't, even though I'm looking at the variance, I can choose not to see that side of it. So I can see the variance still, but I don't have to see the baseline. And I can create as many baselines as I want in this project. And again, whatever area I look at, I'm still seeing that information. So it's just a very quick way of baseline. And because it's unlimited, you're not held back to just 10 baselines of just key information. Every bit of information about this, everything you see inside all these properties is remembered in the baseline, whether it's got costs, resources on it, whatever, it's all there. So you can go back and see those. And if I go back into that one there and just show you the variances here, this is all the information it's saying. And if I choose that as contract baseline, it shows me differences between the bar. If I look at the task, the two differences. Now I can have these as columns, or I can just interrogate it if I wanted to. And it's really important to understand, because you can then look back and understand where the problems occurred, what happened. And this all becomes very important if it gets to a point where legal matters or contractual matters are starting to be discussed. You have the evidence to back up what happened on that schedule, so you can push it through as you go on there. Now, I think we had a question about can you edit non-working or working days in calendar templates? Yes, you can. The calendars themselves, we came from a template, but now it's standalone. So if I go into this one here and I say, okay, in 2020 in May, if I say May the 11th is a holiday, let's actually say 13th, 14th, and 15th is a holiday. I can just add an exception of a holiday. It could be overtime. It could be a weekend or working weekend time. And you can add extra ones to that, and it's for the whole of the day. And I just say yes to that. And there you see I've now just added in an exception. That's unique to this calendar here, and it's unique to this project. So any other projects using that template won't have been affected by this. I could actually go into the back end of the system and just easily copy this and make a duplicate of this and call it a different name, so I could have it working on a different time. So the calendars really allows me to do lots of things inside there. That's in there. So that's really the starting point of this, is that we've gone through and we've created a project, we've worked with the calendar, and even though we've structured it and we've linked it together, we can go into our trade contractors and at any time look at what each of these different subcontractors are doing for us, where they're working. If we had resources and costs assigned, we can actually see what resource and costings were assigned to them in that sense. And then we just go back and we can always look at our normal view. Now in here as well, just as a side note in here, I can go into this side here. I've created another view in here, and this view, I might turn off the links. I might even turn off the displaying of the library. So you can see it's a very simplistic view. I might not have any grid lines on that side if I wanted to. It's very simple in there that I can look at that, but then this view here has everything turned on. So this one over here might be just a simple one, but I might want to see the baselines. So I can have that, so I can compare the two. I can even, if I wanted to, have the two there, and I can have, and it is live, it is the same thing. So if I make changes on one, you see it makes changes and updates all the values in both. So it's live information. And the key thing is when you do this is just save. Now, once you've done all of this, you can save it. You can obviously export it to P6 or Microsoft Project if you wanted to, or I can save it. But what I can also do is I can do a save as. If I browse this to my desktop, I can save it as a PP file, but I can also, in here, so if I save it as a PP file, for example, in here, what we have as well inside as a free download available to us is, if I go to Project Viewer, in here, wait for that to load, we have, this is available from the Alicosoft website as a download. This is free to download, and this is the Powerproject Project Viewer. So what this allows me to do is this allows me to open up the file. So if I just go back here, this file here, I've saved this as my project 123, and if I just do it onto my desktop again, let's just do a save as, browse to my desktop, and I go save it there, and then I close it. You could email that across to someone, and they could then open up in their viewer my project 123, and there it is. So they can view it still. They can still, and again, you can set access rights of what they can and can't see, but they can look at all this, but they can't change anything. It's read only, but it means you can share this read really quickly, and still, it's more valuable than a piece of paper because they can actually see it and they can look around it as they go through. Okay, so that's Project Viewer. I want to see in here now as if we have any further questions. I think someone asked. Questions. Can we edit the templates, the calendars as we've seen there? I think someone said, we can save as project files or import Microsoft project files inside there as we go. Happy to answer any other questions if anyone has any questions regarding what we've just done. I think that's most of the ones that people have asked. And other than that, we will be coming out with our next webinar. I think Michael might have the date, or we'll be sending out the date to everybody. This recording will be available. If you do have any questions, please let us know. Many thanks for attending, Michael. I don't know if you have any comments you'd like to jump in with.
Thanks, Chris. That was fantastic. We will send you all the details for the next webinar that we're going to run. If there's something that you want us to go into detail for, we're more than happy to do something one-on-one with you, or help you create templates or calendar files or anything like that. Just get in touch with Solid Support. I think Chris can put up our contact details slides on screen, but we will send all those details around to you in the meantime anyway. Again, thanks very much. Thanks, Chris, and we'll let you all get back on with your day. Thank you.
Yes, and any questions, we'll let know. Thank you. I'll just put the contact details up.
Yep.
There we go. Many thanks, everybody.